In 2013, China launched a stream of cyber attacks on the United States of America. A high-level hacking group called Iron Tiger had stolen trillions of bytes of data from the US government and secretly monitored key US corporations. As a burgeoning superpower at odds with America's capitalist supremacy, China's hacking enterprise is part of its strategy to challenge the United States' dominant global position. And technological infiltration is just the start. With 2,333,000 active personnel, China has the biggest army in the world. Despite suffering a financial crash in August 2015, China also remains the world's second largest economy and continues to grow at an astonishing rate of 7% every year. As its military, politics and trade relations grow ever stronger, China's dream to displace American power could very soon become a reality. Since the end of the Cold War, Beijing and Washington have maintained peace with each other despite many close calls. Between 1995 and 1996, China angered the United States by initiating missile tests that threatened Taiwan. In 1999, the US accidentally bombed the Chinese embassy in Belgrade during NATO's air assault on Serbia. In 2001, a US spy plane collided with a Chinese fighter jet which killed the Chinese pilot. The American crew were detained in Beijing. And in 2014, Obama announced that America would be reallocating additional diplomatic, economic, and military resources across China.
In this engagement, we are also encouraging China to adhere to the same rules as other nations.
America's pivot to Asia is a deliberate effort to monitor this rising superpower and possibly even prepare for regional conflict. China operates a no-first-use policy when it comes to nuclear weapons. But global politics professor Avery Goldstein predicts that during early crisis developments, US naval forces might mistake a Chinese ballistic missile submarine for a traditional attack submarine and fire, inviting China to initiate a full-blown nuclear war. By infiltrating Chinese airspace, the US could indeed trigger a crisis, especially if China's neighbour decides to lend a hand. China and Russia are two eastern powerhouses with many political similarities, and recent events suggest that there is a strong military alliance forming between them. Trade between the two nations has increased sixfold over the past decade, and globalization professor Alexander Korolev points out that President Putin and Xi Jinping have a mutual interest in promoting an alternative to Western diplomacy. In other words, both countries wish to limit American power. This Russo-Chinese axis is particularly unnerving because there is one area of trade in which Russia has been very generous. Russian arms sales to China are estimated at $1 billion per year. China's arsenal already boasts land attack cruise missiles, missile destroyers, sophisticated grenade launchers with a range of 800 meters, 100,000 sea mines, satellite destroyers designed to black out America's media, and an estimated 3,000 nuclear weapons. And in 2014, Russia began supplying China with its S-400 missile, a deadly weapon with a tracking range of 600 kilometers and the ability to hit targets 400 kilometers away at an amazing speed of 17,000 kilometers an hour. Not only does this sale significantly boost China's military capability, but it continues to strengthen China's bond with America's rival. But despite this budding allegiance, even Russia is wary of its new friend. The former Soviet superpower is nervous that China will reverse engineer the military equipment that Russia currently sells. In a short matter of time, this could reduce Russia's revenue while China matches its technological prowess. Already, China has displayed new anti-aircraft missiles at its World War II anniversary parade in 2014, amongst rows and rows of troops, tanks and aircrafts. This event was a prosperous display of nationalism which hoped to send a clear message to the West about China's military excellence. And in July 2015, Japan expressed fears over China's reclamation work in the South China Sea. China has escalated tensions in Japan and the Philippines by building artificial reefs in the ocean in order to harness oil that belongs to other countries. Challenging these incursions could lead to armed conflict within Asia. The US Treasury Department has shown that China is in a formidable position to keep developing its reefs and armed forces, as it is the owner of $1.3 trillion worth of American debt. This in turn has lowered the value of the Chinese yuan, which makes the country's exports more competitive and keeps China's economy booming. As long as China's economy and its friendship with Russia remains intact, the world is at risk. But on the tumultuous path of international relations, the longevity of the Russo-Chinese axis is questionable. Without the force of Russia behind it, China loses the vital trade and the military support to actualize global conflict.
Now, the dispute between the United States and China over the South China Sea is heating up. In the latest development, Washington has announced plans to continue sending warships to patrol in the contested waters. The U.S. Navy says it will conduct patrols within 12 nautical miles of the artificial islands built by China. Officials said the patrols will take place about 8 times in a year. Meanwhile, Beijing has sent armed naval fighter jets over the islands. The move came just days after a U.S. warship sailed by the islands in the South China Sea. China insists that the construction of the islands will pose no threat to the region. Washington and its allies, however, believe the construction of the Sandy Islands is part of Beijing's militarization of international waters. Let's speak to Michael Penn. He's a journalist and political commentator, and he joins us via Skype from Tokyo. Many thanks for joining us here on Press TV, Mr. Penn. Now, how is this recent dispute between the U.S. and China being viewed specifically by the different parties within the region, like Japan, who's an ally of the U.S.?
Yes, well, I think that people's attitude towards what's going on has a lot to do with their analysis of China. Some people believe that China is expanding militarily and is threatening, and for those countries, the United States action is generally welcome and seen to be an assertion that is something that they can support. On the other hand, there's other countries that don't really see China as a militarily threatening. And for them, what the United States is doing looks to be somewhat to be an exaggerated response and perhaps sort of like warmongering.
Right. So is there a genuine concern that this could escalate into something more serious?
I think that concern exists on all sides, frankly. I think that the Chinese government and the U.S. government and all of the parties in between do worry that the situation could get worse. So I do think that the possibility may be low, but it is there.
So speaking of which, then, are we going to see these parties in between trying to intervene and come up with a negotiated settlement? Or are we going to see these tensions increase as they use the presence of the U.S. Military as leverage?
Well, I think that the parties in the middle have different interests, and they're probably not going to take a united stance on the issue. The issue is complex because there are so many countries involved. I mean, for example, the Philippines is a country that would very much welcome the U.S. assertion into the region because they have a dispute over these same territories with China. But there are other countries that would be more concerned about tensions between the U.S. and China getting out of hand. So, in generally speaking, I think that the chances of the tensions continuing seem to be very high, although spiraling completely out of hand seems rather low.